what's going on in the world today, then you've come to the right place. Welcome to Southern Sense Talk Radio with your host, Annie, the Radio Chick-A-Dee, and featuring Curtis C.S. Bennett and the most interesting guests that you'll find anywhere on Internet radio. So sit back, relax, and remember, Southern Sense is common sense.
All right, and welcome back to another adventure here on Southern Sense, live on iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, X, LinkedIn, Facebook, and everywhere else in the world, including our webpage, Southern Sense. So catch us at southernsense.net. I'm your hostess with the least mostest, the Radio Chick-A-Dee, Annie, along with my patient and oh so courageous Curtis C.S. Bennett, co-host. Good afternoon, Curtis. Ready for another wacky season today.
Oh yeah. I'm waiting for this circus up in New York to finally peter out so we can get this thing up to the Supreme Court. And hopefully wiser heads will prevail.
Yes, and I got to hand it to my guys in blue, NYPD, for tearing down the Palestinian flag and tossing it to the ground and then putting the American flag back up, Old Glory flying back again at SUNY, the City of New York University College. Oh, man, I love these guys, and they've ousted him from Columbia. They're ousting him from Fordham. New York City, I did not have much faith in Eric Adams as mayor of New York, having been out of NYPD and heard stories about him as he was a state representative also, but he showed some backbone, and I really do have to give credit where credit is due. He put his foot down and he said, this is America and not in my city. God bless him for that. I may not agree with a lot of things he's said and done in the past, but he has stood his ground and showed he backs the blue. He backs our men and women in blue. He was looking to now finally protect the city. So if we can only now convince him he's wrong on illegal aliens and leaving New York City as a sanctuary city, maybe we can take back New York City for Americans and for legal residents. So we'll see. We'll see. I'm trying to pull up my homepage.
Yeah, I think he understood. I think he understood that these things could really get out of control where somebody gets hurt or killed. And I don't think he wanted that on his watch.
No, he does not. And it looks like I'm having problems still broadcasting this to my homepage. Is not up there. But if people are watching on Facebook, they can watch also on LinkedIn, as well as on YouTube and Twitch and X. They can watch us live there. So I apologize, still having difficulty getting it broadcast to our homepage. But we'll get it there. You hear that Representative Cuellar is being indicted on bribery charges. It looks like his house was raided, was it 2 years ago, dealing with how do you pronounce that? One of the former republics of the Soviet Union. I can't pronounce it. It's one of the Slavic nations that were once part of the Soviet Union. And there's an indictment now. What is it with these Democrats and bribery? Jeez. Oh, wait a minute. That's right. The Biden family. Oh, why am I surprised? Why am I surprised?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, we've got so much to talk about. And we have David Ditch from the Heritage Foundation joining us at the end of the show. At the beginning of the show, after 3 o'clock, we have Mark Tapscott from the Epoch Times, or as I say, the Epic Times, to drive him crazy. And there's a lot to talk about. We have also, my paperwork is all upside down and backwards. I apologize. The Pentagon is probing. There's a Pentagon watchdog group that is opening a probe into funding to, oh my goodness, China and enemies of America for, what do they call that? Gain of function research. that brought around the COVID virus. And China is at it again, trying to do research into creating a warfare pathogen out of something from the sea. They're doing marine research to find a new pathogen to unleash on us. And I'm wondering how many of our tax dollars are now going into that. We're still trying to figure out how many of our tax dollars have gone into developing the COVID virus. Thank you, Dr. Fauci, for denying the fact you knew about that money going over there. And, oh, by the way, making money off of some of the patents, too, through the development and research in the NIH. We have David Ditch talking to us about how our tax dollars are going to support leftist causes that government has no business in being involved with. So we've got a lot to talk about and a lot to do. So this little wacky blonde is trying to get her act together here. So we're going to get the show. What do you think?
Now, earlier in the week, law enforcement took a major hit down there in Charlotte, South Carolina.
Yes.
I'm just curious, your thoughts on it being prior law enforcement. Do you think there was some procedural missteps in this? That there was one shooter, but it's almost like they were expecting another shooter.
I didn't get into all the details, and there's still a major investigation going on, so they're only releasing it in piecemeal. So I'd be sitting in the back seat trying to determine what was going on. I do know that they were shot at from above. So whoever they were going to serve the warrant on was waiting for them. So instead of them going in and surprising the person they want to serve the warrant on, they in turn were surprised because they were lying in wait. It's a sad situation that 4 members lost their lives. But sometimes you can't predict how these things go. You go in hoping for the best, but expecting the worst. And unfortunately, this is what has happened. The worst has happened. So I'm just going to not try to backseat quarterback on this one and let the investigation go. As it comes out, then they will show what they did right and what they did wrong. Could have it been prevented? I can't say honestly at this point. You can never predict what someone's going to do. Honestly, you can never truly predict. And you just can prepare for every circumstance you can possibly think of, but there's always something that you could have said, well, I could have, should have, would have, may not have changed the situation. So all I do is I pray for the families, I pray for their fellow co-workers, and hope that they learn from this and it doesn't occur again.
Yep. It seemed like they had taken out the first shooter, the guy they were after. What they weren't expecting was to be
a second one
sniped upon by a second. And in the end, I heard it was a woman and a 17-year-old that were taken into custody. So I'm wondering if it was the woman or the 17-year-old who was the second shooter. But I haven't heard anything.
Well, with that said, that's a good day. Yeah, it is a sad day. And I've stood in formation for too many funerals for my brethren. And with that said, those that watch and listen to our show know that we start each and every show with a dedication to a fallen hero. And today's dedication is going to go out to Philadelphia police officer Richard Mendez. And this is from CBSNews.com by Tom Doherty. And he wrote, Philadelphia police officer Richard Mendez was laid to rest on Tuesday, October 24th, at the Cathedral Basilica of St. Peter and Paul in Center City's Logan Square neighborhood. Mendez was fatally shot during a car burglary at a Philadelphia International Airport parking garage on Thursday, October 12th. Officer Paul Ruiz, his partner, was also shot. Ortez was released from the hospital the following Saturday and honored during Game 1 of the National League Championship Series. Mendez and Ortez were arriving to work when police claim they saw a group of people breaking into a car at Terminal DE garage. When they confronted the group, police said the 2 officers were shot. Investigators believe 4 people were involved in the shooting, including Jesus Hermann Madeira Duran, a suspect who died shortly after he was dropped off at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Police said they've made 3 arrests in connection to the shooting. They said they believe they have all suspects involved in the shooting, but don't know which suspect fired the shots that hit Mendez and Ortiz. And this is by Jack Tomczak from the MetroPhiladelphia.com. And he posts, what happened to the, let's bring that back up again. I apologize. Okay. He writes, Maria Carrero urged her father to call out sick on October 12th and spend the night with his family. He told her he could not. He was running low on sick time. Soon after arriving for his shift, police officer Richard Carrero Mendez, 50, was fatally shot inside a parking garage at Philadelphia International Airport. Never in a million years would I have thought that would be the last time I ever saw my daddy, Carrero, 19, told mourners before the start of Mendez's funeral mass at the Cathedral Basilica of St. Peter's and Paul. That night was the worst night of my life. I remember seeing my daddy's cold, dead body lying there, when less than 2 hours ago he was kissing me and my mommy goodnight, she added. Streets were closed around the cathedral that morning as law enforcement from the PPD, New Jersey, Delaware, New York, and elsewhere gathered in Sister Cities Park near a local circle to watch the service on a jumbotron. Mia, your dad is going to be with you forever, Interim Police Commissioner John N. Stanford Jr. said during a eulogy. He'll be watching over you every step of the way. Continue to be the daughter that he was extremely proud of and he loved so much. Mendez and Officer Raul Ortiz, 60, approached a group of men who were attempting to break into vehicles at around 11 p.m. on October 12th inside the Terminal D garage, according to authorities. Police believe one of the men fired at the 2 officers from behind, striking Mendez 4 times. Ortiz was hospitalized with a gunshot wound to his arm and released less than 2 days later. He was among those in attendance at Mendez's funeral. Prosecutors have charged 3 men from Camden County with attempted murder, and a host of other offenses. They are being held without bail. A 4th man allegedly associated with the suspects, 18-year-old Jesus Hermann Madeira Duran, was killed in the shooting. Investigators have said evidence indicates that neither officer fired their weapon. Mendez, who joined the PPD 23 years ago, was posthumously promoted to sergeant. And Mayor Jim Kenney ordered Philadelphia flags be flown at half-staff for 30 days from the date of his death. Mia Carrero said her father was born in Puerto Rico, and Mendez's father retired as a sergeant following a career in New York City Police Department. Mendez met his future wife, Alex Carrero, while the 2 were in high school. Mia added Alex was 2 years younger and not permitted to date until graduation. Mendez patiently waited for his opportunity. Anyone who knew my dad could tell you how much he loved her, Mia said. And anyone who had the pleasure of seeing their love would be jealous of the relationship they had. Stanford said that Mendez would pick up his sister following an overnight shift at the airport and visit their mother, Maria, who had been in rehabilitation center recovering from multiple medical procedures. 2 days after Mendez's death, a package arrived. He had overheard his sister speaking to a nurse about items their mother needed and placed the order without telling anyone, Stanford recounted. Mendez always prioritized education, and Mia is on track to graduate from Temple University this month at a younger age than most college students. A degree was initially out of reach for her dad, Mia said, but he went back to school and earned a bachelor's degree in 2016 and a master's the next year, both in business administration. He was planning to retire and become a teacher. My daddy was our family's backbone. In high-pressure situations, my mother and I can be a mess, but he was always the one that stayed calm, Mia said. His favorite phrase was always, "We got this." Today's show is dedicated to Sergeant Richard Carrero Mendez. It is also dedicated to all the brave men and women out there that serve as first responders, be they law enforcement, firefighters, or emergency services. We also dedicate the show to all the brave men and women out there that serve in our military from the birth of this nation through today and into our hopeful future. And in final words to Sergeant Mendez, we say to you, we got it here. Rest in peace for a job well done, your end of tour. And we dedicate to Sergeant Mendez and all these brave men and women out there serving this nation, at home and abroad, this song by Tiffany, Soul of a Nation. May God bless each and every one.
Let it be said, when we finish this race, we kept them free, we led with grace. Let it be seen, from sea to shining sea, beautiful America, living our legacy. Oh, father, mother, sister, brother, oh, we gotta learn to love each other. Oh, for the soul of the nation, for the next generation. Let us be known as people of honor, humble and bold, faithful through fire. Let us hold firm through our convictions with wide open hearts, eager to listen. Oh, father, mother, sister, brother, oh, we gotta learn to love each other. Oh, for the soul of the nation, for the next generation. Let us make room. Let us reimagine, welcoming voices with true compassion. Let's craft a world with hopes and dreams, challenges known, and those still unseen. Oh, father, mother, sister, brother, oh, we gotta learn to love each other. Oh, for the soul of the nation, for the next generation. Let us be sure, when our time has come, we gave them hope am strong. Let it be said, when we finish this race, we kept them free, yeah, we led with grace.
All right, and we're back. Hey, that went smoothly for once. Oh, let's make sure that we unmute you, Curtis. Little minor detail.
I have my eye on it.
Oh, well. We got a lot to talk about. We're waiting for Mark to call in the next couple of minutes. But I don't know if anyone's been following what's going on with the Donald Trump trial. And I'm seeing case after case against him just falling apart. They had the attorney on there, supposedly, that was making the payments for hush money. And I don't know what these prosecutors are thinking. Normally, and I've been in court, I've been there to testify, numerous occasions, and prosecutors will bring their strongest witnesses in first. You bring in the big guns to begin with. You set the case, you prove the case. Right there, the first 2 or 3 witnesses. And then after that, anyone you bring after that reinforces what the original witnesses say. So they're building up the case. They're doing the exact opposite. I don't see any big guns coming in here. I don't see anything coming forward with overwhelming evidence that he did anything wrong. And anything they do prove is beyond the statute of limitations. They can't find him guilty on because they waited too long to prosecute him. So, I'm seeing this whole thing fall like a house of cards. And watching the commentators on this, and exactly what I'm thinking now is what I was hearing them say last night. And it's like, yeah, you're right. I didn't see the big guns come in. I didn't see that 1-2 punch knocking him out at the start of this trial. All I see is people trying to say something happened and yet being unable to even tie him into it. They have, and this attorney, Cohen, violated attorney-client privilege and secretly taping him and then releasing the tapes to the court. You're supposed to be this man's attorney. You record him without his knowledge, which is questionable legality to that in itself, and then you violate attorney-client privilege and release these tapes to the court. That does not bode well for speaking to his personality, does it?
Well, it just seems like everything that they're doing is subject to being kicked back on appeal. Totally dismiss outright. So, I mean, it all favors Trump in the end, I believe. And I think the longer this goes on, this persecution, the better Trump is,
Yeah.
And drawing people to his side.
And a recent Rasmussen poll that came out this morning shows Trump right now 10 points ahead of Biden. Trump holds 2 rallies on Wednesday, back-to-back rallies on Wednesday. And Biden can barely stand before a microphone for any more than 5 minutes.
Bumbling at that.
And when you have comedians in Italy imitating Joe Biden, that does not speak well for the United States of America.
No, not at all. Not at all. And the thing about it is our comedians are afraid to even say anything because they may be accused of, being non-woke. You have to be careful what you say and who you make jokes about these days, or you fall out of favor.
Yeah. I mean, Saturday Night Live used to be nonpartisan. They made fun of everyone. And all of a sudden they went woke. And so now anyone on the right is subject to Saturday Night Live comedy. And yet last week, they put a skit up, and I was just amazed that they actually did this. They had a gay guy and a female, I guess she was supposed to be part of the LGBT community, saying how they support Hamas. And they had a terrorist holding a machine gun. And they say, oh, we love you, we support Palestine, we support Hamas, and blah, blah, blah. And they're saying all these stupid, sweet, sickening things. And the terrorist is saying, go ahead, because I'm coming to shoot you. And it was so sad because they actually imitated true life. You're watching these protests of these students and all these campuses now going across the United States. And yours is not in Texas or in Florida. No, but they're in New York, showing up in California, and you've got people from the LGBT community, when under Sharia law and the Quran, their lifestyle is punishable by death. They have women out there scantily clad when under the Quran and Sharia law, their attire alone will get them stoned to death. You have blacks supporting them, and yet, according to the Quran and to Sharia law, you would not be considered a human. You would be, well below them. And in the Quran and Sharia, they support slavery. And it doesn't make sense to me. And I call them blissful idiots for a reason, because I guarantee none of them has ever read the Quran. None of them has ever studied Sharia law. None of them has probably even opened the Bible, much less the Torah, to know what's inside of it. They have no idea what Hamas and Muslim terrorists stand for. And they're chanting death to America, the very country that has given them the freedoms and liberties to protest.
I would say these college kids, most of them never, ever read the U.S. Constitution.
I guarantee they have not read the Constitution. And what really blew my mind, you watched thousands of these students on prayer rugs doing the Muslim prayer. They're reciting the Shahada. Do they understand what the Shahada it means when a non-Muslim recites it in front of a Muslim? They have no idea what they just did. Every last one of those blissful idiots converted themselves to Islam. If you recite the Shahada in front of a Muslim, you have now converted from whatever your religion is, or even if you're atheist, you are now considered a Muslim and subject to Sharia law. Blissful idiots? I'd like to see them. Iran turned around and said that we're going to offer you free tuition if you come to Shiraz University here in Iran. Watch them try to pull half the stunts in Iran that they pull here. They will be stoned to death. They will be thrown in jail for violating Sharia law. And we have the one, the only, who needs no introduction at all, because we love him so much, Mark Tapscott from the Epoch Times. And I was doing my rant against these blissful idiots that were kneeling in prayer with Muslims reciting the Shahada. And I turned around to my husband, do you understand what they just did? Reciting the Shahada before a Muslim, they just converted from whatever their religion or atheism is to being Muslim and now subject to Sharia law.
Hey, Mark.
Hey,
hello, Mark. And how are you this wonderful sunny day?
Well, fortunately, I'm not on campus, and I'm not in the middle of a demonstration to kill Jews. I never thought we would have that in America.
No, not only that, death to America.
Yeah.
With the reciting death to America, and the very America that gave them the right to protest.
Yeah.
Right of free speech. The right to seek redress from their government.
Well, I have a feeling that, and it'll probably take some time, but eventually the truth will come out and we will discover that some significant proportion of the people who have been organizing and running these demonstrations, and there's no doubt that it's coordinated and has been planned for some time and funded by George Soros. But at some point, we're going to learn that a significant part of them aren't even American citizens. They're people that have come in illegally in the last 3 years.
That's true.
And, you know, this can be just a preview of stuff that's going to prove much more serious in the way of consequences of having an open border like we've had.
And I was telling this to my husband last night, and I remember I could not find the magazine article, but the front cover of the magazine, I don't know if it was Time, Newsweek, or what it was one of them, and I cannot find the magazine. The front cover, it said OTM, showing the southern border and showing migrants over it. And the magazine was published somewhere between 98 and 2000. For me, I can't, but I read it in the doctor's office. And it was the first time ever I heard the term OTM, meaning other than Mexican crossing illegally over the southern border. And this was being reported back in the 90s, the late 90s, citing the unusual number of them. And in that article, it was the first time I learned that there were prayer shawls and Korans being abandoned in the desert by these people crossing illegally. And there were signs written in Chinese to help facilitate the illegal boarding crossers to find shelter and help and aid when they cross illegally. I'm sorry, in Chinese, prayer shawls, Korans, and the southern border in the late 90s, before 9/11, which struck me really strange because 9/11 didn't happen just a few years later. We knew about this decades ago. So we were being invaded for the last several decades. We don't have a small platoon here. We've got a massive army here within our own borders.
Yeah. I was talking with Congressman Mark Green during a panel discussion that he was part of Wednesday, and asked him about this very thing. And of course, he's a retired career Army officer. And he said, as you would expect from a politician, you're asking me to speculate, and I don't like to do that, but let me put my Army hat back on. And then he very systematically laid it out. If he was, with another country and was part of their military planning how to overcome America, he would be doing exactly what has been going on for the last who knows how many years.
Yeah.
Infiltrating across our border. And I hate to sound like an alarmist, but the reality is, according to our government, that some 50,000 predominantly young single males from China across the border in the last 3 years. And, we're talking about China. You don't leave China without the government's permission.
Mm-hmm.
How that is one of those unpleasant, disturbing facts that you really have got to face if you are responsible for the safety and security of the American people.
Absolutely. Now, a friend of mine, I don't know if you know Dan Perkins. He's been on the show as long as you have been for as many years, but he actually pulled up the police blotter in NYPD from the arrests that they were making at Columbia University.
Yeah.
more than 25% of the people arrested there were not college students.
Right.
One woman they arrested had been arrested 80 times prior for protesting. She is a paid agitator, a paid protester, and she makes approximately $100,000 a year protesting. And these kids that are invading these universities, agitators, there's nothing else to call them, but they are paid agitators, work 8 hours a week, and get paid $3,000. I want that job. I really do.
Well, it pays a lot better than journalism does, I'll say that.
I was watching one guy wearing the prayer shawl around his face and hiding his face, but reading from his cell phone as he's yelling through the bullhorn. He's reading a script on exactly what to say. Tell me that's not a paid agitator.
Yeah. Well, there's. I'm sorry, Curtis. Go ahead.
I was just going to say from my research with China in particular, any of their citizens that come to the United States or any other country are obligated and required to do everything in their power to gain information and report back to the government there.
Yep.
Well, that brings us up to an article you recently wrote in the Epoch Times, I almost said Epic, about Pentagon watchdog that is doing this probe into money going for research. And lo and behold, majority of it's going to China.
Yep.
And you wrote a beautiful article showing that this has been going on for more than a decade. And you're citing years from 2014 to 2023. And other foreign countries are also getting this Defense Department monies. It was Department of Defense Inspector General Robert Storch that did the research. And it wasn't just the DOD, but Health and Human Services and other agencies are sending our tax dollars overseas to perform research to figure out how to destroy America with things such as COVID. And recently there was an article I caught that China is now getting our tax dollars to do marine research on other types of pathogens they may apply into use in warfare. Yeah. It hasn't stopped. COVID wasn't enough to teach us a lesson, and they're still doing this. Our money is still going to people that are looking to destroy us.
Yeah. That story was based on the report by the Inspector General at the Department of Defense. And I frankly was a little surprised that he laid it out in as great detail as he did. It really is puzzling, we'll put it that way, that the American Department of Defense would have anything at all to do with providing American tax dollars to Chinese interests who are doing what we know to be, and because we've declared it illegal here in this country, gain of function research to create, more pandemics, and the more they develop them and figure out how to give them certain characteristics such as resistance to counter medicine. We're giving millions and millions and millions of dollars to them to do that. And we've known for decades that, maybe they do something, they produce a product which they give to us, but they also keep for themselves all of the information required to do that product and make it bigger, make it better, make it more lethal. And then they can use it against us. So we help them develop the weapons that they use against us. It is insane. It is highly insane. Matter of fact, we're going to have David Ditch on from Heritage a little right after you. And he did an in-depth research into our tax dollars and how they're funding leftist causes. Yeah. And we are actually giving our tax dollars
to enemies to destroy us not only from without, but also within. And it just blows my mind that we can't even hold our government to the enumerated powers written in the Constitution. It's as if the Constitution no longer exists and it's a whole free-for-all.
I'm going to reveal my age now. I'm old enough to remember in 1994, when Newt Gingrich led the Contract with America campaign, that for the first time in what had then been 40 years, the Republicans gained the majority in both the House and the Senate. And one of the key pledges that was in the Contract with America was the promise to defund the left. And that was specifically to go to dig into the federal budget, find the monies, millions and millions and hundreds of millions of tax dollars going to left-wing groups. I mean, you don't have to be, you don't have to assume anything when they tell you they're going to use this money for causes and activities that are associated with left-wing ideology. The Republicans went through the motions, but they never really got serious about doing defund the left. And unfortunately, that's a familiar problem with the Republican Party since then. An awful lot of talk about doing things, but then when they get an opportunity to deliver it, they frequently don't come through. And the consequences of that particular one, not defunding the left in 1995, are why we have the problems that we have today with billions and billions of dollars going from the Department of Defense, Department of Health and Human Services, NIH, CDC, China, to develop pathogens that can then be used against us.
It is stunning. I mean, if the average American were to actually look at what our government is doing, they would not honestly believe it. I mean, our Congress has now given away their legislative powers to paid bureaucrats working for the government. And to make it even worse, they've unionized those bureaucrats. Yeah. So we can't even get rid of them without having to break a union. Oh, wait a minute, didn't Ronald Reagan do that? I'm old enough to remember that. I owned a travel agency at the time he was busting the union. So I remember that very well. It affected a lot of my clients for the better.
You know who that really had an impact on, other than the union, of course, the Air Traffic Controllers Union. The Soviets, when Reagan did that, the Soviets looked at each other and said, this guy, he means what he says. And that set the context for Reagan's ultimately successful strategy to win the Cold War.
Yeah.
And see,
Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Tear down this wall. Yep.
That's what other countries look for towards
Leadership.
America, strong leadership.
Yep.
And when we don't have it, they're going to either walk over us or try to destroy us.
Yep. Hey, Curtis, let me ask you a question. That's a NASA shirt you're wearing.
Yep.
You know, I've got a NASA polo that I thought about wearing today, and I didn't. I wish I'd known that. I would have.
Yeah, I got this. I can't even remember where I got this from, but I liked it.
I have a good friend who is a lab scientist at NASA. They can do some amazing stuff.
Oh, I love used to watching the space shuttle take off here in Florida.
Yeah.
I miss that. We all do.
Yeah, we all do. They say they're going back to the moon. We'll see.
Oh, as long as the government doesn't make them do the DEI.
Yeah.
What was it, the Muslim outreach they were doing at one point? How does that have to do with anything within space? I mean, that just floors me anyway. There's another article you wrote about, and everyone's talking about TikTok. Yeah. And there was talk about banning TikTok from the United States, which there are now people, especially on the right, that are fighting the ban because they're saying freedom of speech. There is a move in government to pass legislation to make it age restrictive, on social media networks. There are some states that have been putting that into place. I believe South Carolina, here where I live, is one of them. I can see requiring age restrictions on social media. However, with the caveat that's saying that if the parent authorizes the child and the parent says, okay, this site is fine, because if you turn around and just blanketly say all social networks, you can't. There are some networks that help with education, social networks. Sure. You can't give a blanket all over the place. No. And it would have to be dealing with certain subjects that are harmful to a child growing. I can understand that. And I fought with the idea about banning TikTok because we know it's controlled by communist China. With that said, I would say it does not belong on any government computer system. It should not be. Businesses can decide whether or not to ban it on their own. But an individual has the right to make an informed decision on whether or not they want to go onto TikTok. And what they put up there is their decision. You know where it's coming from. And if you choose to buy made in China, then that's your choice. If you choose to buy made in America, again, that's your choice. If you shop at Walmart, I call it Wally World, you know you're going to get made in China. If you shop at your local craft store, you know you're getting made in America. It's an informed decision for an adult. So I don't see why our federal government is being involved in something to this extent.
Well, the key word you said was informed, and sadly, a lot of Americans are uninformed or misinformed, and that's why we have the problems that we're having now, especially on these campuses. They're misinformed, and as far as letting the parents decide, most of them don't have no problem now with their kids watching R-rated and X-rated stuff. There's little parental, control when it comes to social media, and the kids can run circles around their parents when it comes to social media and computers.
Yeah. And what you just said, Senator Marsha Blackburn, who I quoted in my story that I think you're referring to, that's exactly what she said. That was precisely her point. She didn't say this, but I suspect that beyond that particular point, that parents should have the ultimate say over what their children can look at on social media. I suspect what she's also concerned about is giving the government more power to shape what people, regardless of their age, the kinds of information that they have access to. That's a very slippery slope, and frankly, I'm a little bit surprised. Some of the conservatives in the Senate that are really rallying behind this particular measure. I would have expected more of a concern about that particular provision.
Now, my understanding was that this was just against TikTok. Now, you're saying there's a bill out for everything?
Facebook, Instagram, social media.
Then I don't agree with that. But TikTok.
But Curtis, you just pointed out the other problem. Mm-hmm. Who decides the definition of what constitutes social media?
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you get some people that are homeschooling their kids, and they'll open up a chat room or a page where they can work with other parents and other kids. So when you ban it on this, you then prevent them from having that tool. So like I said, who makes that decision? And then who decides what's good social media and what's bad social media? Yeah. It becomes total censorship. But then again, this is the same Congress that renewed the NDAA, the FISA warrant.
Right.
We don't learn. We already know government is spying on us. They're just going to find another way to do it.
Yeah.
They're running around us, and no one's paying attention. That scares me the most. No one is honestly paying attention to what they're doing. Oh, it sounds good. So yeah, right. If you don't say it in 40 characters or more that they can understand, then they're not going to absorb the information. Yeah. Hence, what we have going on our college campuses today.
Yeah. Guys, I hate to, but I've got to run. I've got a deadline this afternoon.
That's cool.
Well, Mark, it's always fun to have you, and I see you're not all blown up like a chipmunk, like you were.
Yeah, it's funny, but thank you for remembering.
And next time we can coordinate wearing NASA.
Next time, yeah. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Mark. God bless for all the hard work you do. People can reach you at theepictimes.com.
E-post.
See you later.
Take care, Mark. Oh, man. You guys are really, really wonderful. Yeah, when I read this article about banning social media, I mean, I had a hard time with that. We're letting government shape the message.
Yeah.
And look what that's getting us now.
My problem has always been TikTok and TikTok alone, because of what the material that they're sending over here is not what they share with their own children. They send them a lot of stuff over here that's junk and anti-American, and while they feed their children the sciences and math and things like that, they're not allowed to get what our children get as far as the material, the content that's on TikTok when it comes to the free world.
Well, there's a lot of things that go into that. Like I said, if you're going to go onto a social network, whatever it is, know what network you're getting onto. Just because everyone else is on there doesn't mean it's something that's good. And it's up to the individual to make an informed decision for themselves. If they don't, then it's their own fault for not looking into it. When you buy a car, aren't you going to find out what the heck the car's all about before you get in and start driving it, make sure everything's working? The same thing with a social network. Anything and everything can be dangerous out there if it's in the wrong hands.
Well, I think a lot of people in the United States, when it comes to like the internet or other things, they feel that, especially when it comes to, say, like food, the safety in food, they figure that government oversight has made sure that the content, or say, for instance, food is all right. But the FDA, they often fail.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, people should take an interest in, the information that they get and the source of that information, but they don't, because I think they feel like the government already did all that. Or why would we be looking at it, everybody,
Well, there's a lot to say about it. And again, it's up to a parent to decide what is right or wrong for a child. But right now, government is not acknowledging the parent has that responsibility, has that right. That parental right is given from God, not from government. But government's taking it away from us and saying, well, if your child decides to change their gender or even change their species, they're no longer a human being, they're a cat or a dog or a cow or whatever it is they want to be. It's okay. It's okay. A child who's not physically or mentally developed to make these decisions, government is saying, all right, yeah, we're going to protect that child's right to make that decision. You don't allow them to drive a car before a certain age. You don't allow them to drink alcohol or smoke cigarettes or vape or anything before a certain age. Why do you think government has the right to allow a child to make the decision to alter anything that would totally destroy their life? I mean, suddenly you were a little boy and you want to become a little girl that wants to become a little boy, or a little boy that wants to become a dog, or a little girl that wants to become You're allowing them to make life-altering decisions. Mm-hmm. And at times mutilate their body to the point where then they do become an adult. They're unable to have children, to enter in a good relationship, have self-respect for themselves. They're more prone for drug use, alcohol abuse, sexual abuse, suicide at a higher rate than a normal person. And we're allowing government to let these children make these decisions.
And see, there's another angle I'm looking at now at this whole situation, and that is what they call a red flag. In other words, take for instance, everyone over 40 or 50 have heard of D.B. Cooper, the hijacker that never was caught. Mm-hmm. Some people think that was a red flag. In other words, a CIA operation, so they can have an excuse to come up with all kind of regulations and security things and restrictions when it comes to airline flights and things like that, which a lot of that came after that incident. So in this case, we're talking about TikTok, which I feel is a threat, but they could use that as a way to advance another ulterior agenda to take away our rights and things.
Exactly. If we allow them to determine what we watch, who we listen to, who we talk to, who we interact with, we have now allowed government to control the very fabric of our lives. And I may not like TikTok because I know for a fact it comes out of Chinese communists. But when I see someone say, "Oh, I'm up on TikTok," and I'm sorry, I'm not going to go on to a social network that's run by the Chinese Communist Party. Oh, it's not. Yes, it is. Do your research. And I'll leave it at that and walk away. Most of the time people go, "Oh, I didn't know. I didn't realize." But, I monetize myself and I make money off of it. Okay, fine. At least you know what you're getting yourself into. But when you tell the rest of the nation that we're too dumb to determine where and who and what we want to do and talk to, that's not freedom. That's not the liberty that our founding fathers fought for. That's not what the Constitution stands for. That's not why we fought for the Declaration of Independence. And that very liberty, I may not agree with you going on there, but that's your choice. And if you're going to tell me I can't regulate what my child does until they're a full self-emancipated adult, then why are you taking away my parental rights to care for the child that I bore? The child that I am raising, the child I am paying for.
I'm going to have to look into this more because I'm curious who came up with this proposed bill, because it's all encompassing, and I don't think it should be that. It should be specific,
Well, it's a bipartisan bill by Senator Ted Cruz, who I love Ted Cruz, but I think he's wrong in this. And the Democrat from Hawaii, Brian Schatz. What a last name. Shat. I'm sorry. I can't help it. This is the kid in me.
Is he Canadian or something like William Shatner?
He's a senator from Hawaii. But I do agree that when Ted Cruz said that children should have their eyes on the board, meaning the blackboard, not their cell phones. Yeah, I agree. When those kids enter that classroom, cell phones should not be with them. Cell phones should be left in their locker. They should be turned off. What schools can do, and prisons do this, put a cell phone blocker in the building. However, there's a problem with that. Should you have an active shooter or any other incident, if a teacher needs to use a cell phone to notify authorities for help, you now have cell phones blocked. The best thing is for the school to say, no cell phones in the classroom. You leave them in your locker. Only the teacher and the teacher's aide are allowed to have the cell phones. Or even have the teacher collect them, hold them in his or her desk. And when the children leave to go to the next class, you hand it to them. Next teacher, take them away. Find a solution, folks, to bring the child's attention back to the blackboard and to the teacher that's instructing and away from their cell phones. There has to be a solution.
I say confiscate them at the beginning of the class, return them at the end of the class. Kids are going to be distracted, looking at what's going on. They'll be texting each other and not paying attention to the lesson.
Yeah. There's so much to be said for a lot of this stuff. And we should have our next guest dialing in very shortly. We're waiting for David Ditch from the Heritage Foundation. Meanwhile, we have a bunch of stories that we've been following, and we had Stormy Daniels up on the stand yesterday. And I'm sorry, Stormy Daniels' lawyer was on the stand yesterday. Keith Davidson, who was the one who negotiated the agreements between Stormy Daniels and the model Karen McDougal and the attorney Cohen that was representing Trump, you know, she fell apart. Her whole testimony just did not prove a single thing. They had Hope Hicks, and Hope Hicks was the press secretary to Donald Trump when he was running for president and joined his administration shortly after. And she was the one that used to send us people over here onto the show when Donald Trump was running for office. And we had some great guests, Peter Navarro being one of them. And now she's being brought up onto the stand saying, well, did you hear Trump say? I'm sorry, this is hearsay evidence. It's not admissible. And yet she could not add anything. And here she was dealing with Trump every single day. And so far, from what I'm hearing, she has not proven a single charge against him. So I'm saying that witness after witness is just letting the prosecution down, and the case is falling apart. It is falling apart. Fannie Willis in Georgia is now under ethics investigation and could possibly be disbarred very soon. Case after case. The document case where they raided Mar-a-Lago, that's starting to fall apart too. You know, one after another is falling apart. And they have all these senseless prosecutions. And I heard a rumor somewhere that there are more charges to be brought up against. I'm sorry. These are people coming out of the woodwork for what? To impede a campaign. There's nothing else. There's no other reason for this. Simply to impede him from campaigning. But he's not giving up. He'll campaign after he gets out of court. He'll campaign on days he's not in court. And he's gaining ground.
Well, I hear he's been going around when he has the time to like pizzerias and union workers, and he's spending his time wisely, kind of campaigning unofficially while he's up there. And it makes sense because he's drawing people to him, and those who see that injustice is being done are more sympathetic, you know, to what's going on, because Americans at heart, they root for an underdog. And in this case, it's Trump against the system, the entire system, the weight of the federal government. And it can't be a more posted, you know, child for being an underdog than to go up against the federal government.
Yeah.
So they're sympathetic to Trump.
That they are. I'm trying to see if I can get a hold of our guest, David Ditch, to see if I can get him to
give us a call.
Yeah, I did. I did. Replying. Oh, good Lord. I did.
Hopefully no big story broke.
No, I'm trying to figure out what am I looking at? Oh, shoot. Let's see if I can get, oh, shoot. Where the heck is the code? I did send it to him. I did send it. Oh, shoot. Bear with us, folks. This is not how we normally do things, and I'm trying to figure out how I end up inviting him to come in onto this. Oh, here we go. Invite. Let's see.
Well, it's still a new platform for us, and we're still learning.
Yeah, all right. Just bear with us, folks, as I'm trying to send him a message. Oh, good Lord. Let me just, I'm going to have to hand type this in. Yeah, just bear with me, guys. I apologize. So, Curtis, you take over for a few seconds while I just send this out to David, because this is not short.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to make some comments on what's going on at our colleges and universities. As we talked about when Mark was on, we talked about strong leadership. And a lot of these states and at these colleges, you don't have strong leadership. Some of these deans and presidents of these universities, they don't know how to handle the situations that's going on their campuses. But I tell you one thing, here in Florida, it's been made clear that there will be consequences for anyone who starts to tear up property and try to take over a campus. It's not going to be allowed. It's not going to be tolerated. So in that vein, I would say if we had more leaders like maybe Ron DeSantis or Trump at the local and state level, we wouldn't have these outbreaks like we see now, not at all. In a way, the one reason why they're doing it, because they can get away with it. Look at the one president at this Columbia. How many times he drew the line in the sand and they crossed it. So he just made another line in the sand and they crossed that. People, when they view you as being weak, that's when they're more apt to come at you even stronger, because they see that, you just don't have what it takes to stand up against them. And I think that's one reason why when Trump was in office, the world respected the United States, because just like Mark said with Ronald Reagan, they knew he meant what he said, and he was willing to back up what he said.
Well, hopefully I sent the link over to David. Let's hope that he gets it. But as it turns out, holy cow, trying to do this in my email and not exactly working out too well. So I'm sorry, folks. This is live radio. Yeah, here we go.
And what I tell people that I know from Philadelphia and beyond that are Democrats and vote Democrat, I tell them, y'all can focus on personalities all you want, but you really need to be focusing on the economy and how it's impacting your ability to have food in your house and gas in your tank.
We have him finally. Let's bring him in.
Right.
Good afternoon, David. How are you today? If you can center yourself on your camera. There you go. We got you.
Okay.
Yeah, I did send you the link yesterday. I guess you didn't get it because I sent it to you and to Corinne to make sure you got it. But
Interesting.
And I also sent it to you via LinkedIn.
Wow. Okay. Well, my apologies.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. We had Mark Tapscott on just a little while ago. We were talking about government spending. And I did read your report, put it before the camera, about the left. Oh, yeah. And what I didn't realize is how insidious it has gotten, these government grants and spending of our tax dollars to ridiculous causes. Mm-hmm. And you write in this report, and I was discussing it with Mark, that I said, I've been watching Congress aggregate their responsibilities more and more to government bureaucrats, in which the administration turns around and makes them their tools. And it's like they play along happily. So we've got government bureaucrats that are lifelong members of employment in our United States government who are now unionized too, taking our tax dollars and throwing it into the garbage can. I was reading some of these things that they was going through, and it just blew my mind. And you got to see, I've got highlights and circles and arrows and comments left and right. Oh man, this is amazing. This report is absolutely stunning.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. It can be hard to determine exactly how much is the responsibility of the Biden administration. Obviously, the executive branch the White House tells these government agencies what to do. At the same time as we know that these agencies are staffed by leftists overwhelmingly. You can look at, what the voting patterns were like in and around Washington, D.C. It's a sea of dark blue. You look at campaign donations. And frankly, you look at incentives. What kind of person is interested in going to work for a government agency to micromanage the lives of their fellow Americans? Typically isn't conservatives. So it's not a surprise that they're staffed by leftists. And then in turn, when Congress says, okay, National Science Foundation or Department of Education or Health and Human Services, here's a slush fund of billions of dollars that you can use practically however you want, and you can give it to whatever groups you want as long as they vaguely pretend that they're going to be addressing some sort of a social problem. What do we think is going to happen? It's what happens year in and year out. There are only two solutions. A, you need to have really strong conservatives in control of the White House who can hopefully rein in the worst excesses of the federal bureaucracy, which is next to impossible given how huge it is, how broad and deep the swamp is. It's almost impossible to control entirely. Or we can maybe try the one thing Congress hasn't done at all for the better part of a century, which is to stop handing these left-dominated bureaucracies untold and practically unchecked amounts of taxpayer dollars.
You know, when I was reading about what President Biden has done with his executive orders, from day one when he started doing this, I asked, are any of these executive orders that he's issued and have people implement, can he be impeached for some of these things? Because he's now usurping the power of Congress and spending money without appropriations from Congress. Can we impeach him for this? Does anyone have the cojones to try to impeach him?
I mean, as far as the executive orders go, it's tricky. The executive orders themselves don't necessarily mean that they're spending extra money. So something like some of the student loan quote unquote forgiveness, which means they're just passing the debt on to taxpayers. That is in many cases spending money that hasn't been authorized, and that's been taken to court. And on that, and there's a few other similar cases, the Biden administration has lost justifiably in court. As far as executive orders go, I'm not a legal expert, so I can't say exactly what the remedy is, whether it be impeachment, whether it be taking it to the courts. But the bottom line is there has not been meaningful pushback from Congress or the courts to check these abuses of federal power. And again, Congress says you're going to spend money, say transportation. Biden administration, we want you to use this money to build roads and bridges. And then the Biden administration says, okay, we're just going to say that these roads and bridges need to work to benefit environmental justice and racial equity and all these other leftist nonsense terms that were nowhere in the authorizing legislation. And then when states and localities apply for the money so that they can do the road projects they're counting on doing, they have to jump through all these extra hoops.
You know, it's funny. I've been battling my local county council, and I always tell people that all government, all issues start locally first. And I've been battling them for projects they've been putting up left and right. And sometimes I win, a lot of times I lose. But I'm wondering how many of these funds that they're doing for these infrastructure projects, the transportation projects, are federal dollars tied to these programs. Because I see them building these parks and walkways and bikeways and things where there's no need for them. There's no traffic. And I'm wondering how much of this in our sales tax dollars they're asking us are also federal matching dollars tied to these programs. It got me really thinking last night. And I intend to ask county council in the very near future, because when I read what you write in this, it just was ringing a lot of bells in my head.
No, you're absolutely right. If you go back a couple decades, the overwhelming majority of federal infrastructure funding was going to things that are national networks. The highway system, the interstate system, airport system. Now, increasingly, what they're doing is they're throwing money that, again, they're saying they're putting it in the highway fund, but then the highway fund has become a slush fund. So it can be used for bike lanes. It can be used for sidewalks. It can be used for hyper local infrastructure. So then that means it's going through Washington. So if you're a local politician, you're saying, oh, the federal government is paying for it. It's free money. So then I don't have to pay for it, except that on the back end, we're paying for it through federal taxes. And because there's deficit spending is so high, we're paying for it with inflation. There's no such thing as a free lunch. but the politicians just are trying to avoid accountability for the cost of these projects. And then when a local official says, okay, I'm getting this money from Washington, well, I can apply it for all these different kinds of projects that the local taxpayers wouldn't be willing to fund at the cost that we're paying for it. But because it's from Washington, it's free money, then we're going to spend on it. And you multiply this across the entire country. All these ridiculous boondoggles only move forward because they're funneled through Washington. It's a shell game, and we're all worse off for it.
You know, I had one of my county councilmen, I go through a certain intersection every single day to get in and out of the neighborhood I live in. And I saw guys there doing surveys on the intersection. And it's an intersection I have always asked them to put a traffic light at. So I called my local county councilman. I had him on speed dial. And I said, Paul, what's going on at such and such an intersection? Oh, we're doing a survey to put in a traffic circle. I said, how much is that going to cost? Oh, it's $6 million. Well, a traffic light only costs $10 million. This traffic circle is going to cost $6 million. And all of a sudden the light bulb goes up in my head. And I said, where's the money coming from? Oh, don't worry. It's coming from the state and federal. I said, so you're telling me it's not my tax dollars? We pay those state and federal dollars. Why are we putting up a $6 million traffic circle when a $10,000 masthead light would do perfectly fine? Oh, but the upkeep on the light. Well, I've seen that traffic circle now since I've been living here for the last 10 years be rebuilt 3 times. So if I'm seeing this on the local level, how massive is it on the federal level? Because you're right that it includes identity of politics to the point that a New York Times reporter, Azara Klein, called it, what is it? Let me make sure I get this correctly now. I have it circled. Here we go. Where did I? Here we go. It's a bagel. Where's that bagel comment?
Everything bagel liberalism.
Right. Thank you very much. I was looking for it because I told you I got everything circled, underlined everywhere. I mean, even where you have, what was this one? Environmental radicalism being involved, where you had it involving NOAA. The NOAA Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration released guidance to promote IK. Now, what's IK?
Indigenous knowledge.
Through its decision-making process. And next to it, since I live in a hurricane area and June 1st starts hurricane season, must be fun during hurricanes. What does the indigenous people have to do with us preparing for hurricanes?
And there's so much of this absolute nonsense that's flying under the radar. Everyone listen to the sound of my voice. You have better things to do in your lives than to be worrying about this, and that's why they think they can get away with it, because people are busy living their lives. They don't have the time to go through all this minutia. So they decide, okay, again, we have these federal science agencies, the National Science Foundation, we have the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. In some cases, doing what should be important tasks, but then there's some leftist constituency group, in this case it's Native American groups, who are saying, hey, we want to be involved in this process, we want a special set-aside, or we want a special say, we want to go around the normal channels, and these far left staffers in the Biden administration, the people who are realistically, they're the ones running the show. Biden just sort of smiles and nods along with all their stupid ideas. And so you end up with all these different federal activities, all these projects that would normally cost a certain amount and take a certain length of time, but they pile on all the demands for all these different leftist constituencies. So everything costs more, everything takes longer to get accomplished, the quality goes down. The left, for example, with science, the left talks a big game about how they love science, science with a big S, and you'll see yard signs about how in this house we believe in science. When we actually go to science policy, they're undermining it by saying that the sort of nativistic beliefs of these tribes, Well, what they're saying is the way the world works is just as good as what actual scientists are saying. They're the ones who are undermining science.
Yeah, I have in the margins on that section, use voodoo magic to heal, which is what they're looking for. Curtis, you were going to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I tend to look at this from a government and waste perspective. In other words, I've been involved with, say, like state programs where they get government grants and things like that. And should you happen to not spend all of it towards the end of the year, you have people scrambling around say, we got to find some way to spend this money. Instead of just saying, well, this is all we need, and get back to the government what you didn't use. But their mindset is this: well, if we don't use it all, we're going to get less the next year. So they plot and plan to spend this money any kind of way they can and try to legitimize it when really they don't need it.
That's absolutely correct. There have been lots of studies showing that spending from these different agencies spikes in the last month and the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
It's not linked to any legitimate government function. It's just we need to get this money out the door so it looks like we need all the money.
I was looking at these selected foreign grants, federal grants to foreign aid, diversity and inclusion scholarship to Miramar. Okay. Girl-centered climate action in Brazil. That must be fun during the carnival in Rio. I can see that, right? Electric motorcycle charging stations in Uganda. Anti-disinformation in the Middle East. Okay. Now, wait a minute. You're going to tell... I'm just shaking my head. The disinformation toolkit in Australia, but isn't Australia censoring their citizens and in times jailing them now, like England is doing? Heaven forbid they just say something that's politically incorrect. Yeah, that's going to work real out. Responsible digital citizens against misinformation in Armenia. Climate change and disinformation training in Ecuador. Disinformation training for librarians in New Zealand. I'm laughing at this, but this is our tax dollars. This is just a small sample.
Exactly. And it's one thing, we know full well that the Biden administration wants to fight, quote unquote, disinformation here at home, and we've had lots of big fights about that. But they're also seeding these leftist ideas globally. What is imperative for Americans to understand is that the radical activists we see protesting in favor of terrorism on campuses across the country, we see them screaming about climate change and blocking highways. We see them claiming that boys are girls and girls are boys and trying to promote the radical gender ideology. They form what I call the infrastructure of the left. Their goal is to transform society based on hardcore Marxist ideology. And what's happening, especially under the Biden administration, but what has also been happening for decades, is the federal government is a pass-through entity. And these groups, these activists, whether they're inside government, inside these agencies, or whether they're in organizations that get funded through federal grants, they are using our tax dollars to undermine the beliefs and values that made America the greatest nation in the history of the world. And that's why it shouldn't be a matter of whether we give these activists tens of billions of dollars or maybe we give it a little haircut. We need to be getting rid of this root and branch, cut it all down.
Absolutely. I completely agree. When we were having problems with Mexico and, of course, over the southern border, the first thing I said is you cut off any federal funds going to them and we'll get the border under control. And it's as simple as that. That's the wall. But instead, we're giving countries these funds for these idiotic things. And, once they get a hold of the funds anyway, they're not going to use them for the things that we told them they're supposed to be for. They're going to use them any which way they want. and it's going to line some oligarch's pocket, some king's pocket, some tyrant's pocket, and not go to help people with legitimate needs. And we're giving it for the wrong reasons to the wrong people.
And you just hit on another prime example, one that I didn't actually touch on in that particular report. The administration gives billions and billions of dollars every year to non-governmental organizations here in America that help to enable this endless flow of humanity pouring across the southern border, sending people to every congressional district, hooking them up with welfare services and housing and food, all sorts of social services. And they are helping to essentially say, hey, if you come across the border, we're going to give you all these things. And then when people are over here and they see how good things are thanks to the U.S. taxpayers, then they tell all their relatives who are still in the country they came from, hey, you keep it coming. We are paying to exacerbate this problem. It's gotten so much worse under Biden, but again, Congress controls the purse strings. There are specific accounts that Congress has devoted far more money than ever before, any time previously. They're making the situation worse. They don't have to give these organizations this money. They can say no. They can cut it off.
Yeah, and HR 2 would have cut off those NGOs if it were ever passed. And I was there in D.C. in November. They're lobbying with the fairus.org for you guys to try to get it there. I walked back and forth between the offices, and this old body didn't take too well to it, but we were there. But David, thank you for the hard work you do. And I'm sorry there was a little mix-up on getting you on the show, but now I got your email so I can email you directly next time. And we'll definitely have to have you back on because we love you.
Appreciate it, Em. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. David Ditch, you can find him at heritage.org, and they do great work over there. We're down to our last few minutes here, Curtis. We will be back next week with some great guests. I've been working on a book I'm reading called Arabella, about dark money and the spider web behind Arabella Fund. And oh my God, that would scare the bejesus off of you. Hopefully we'll have that author on Friday. Otherwise, I'll let you know, Curtis, we need someone else. So until then, I say to everyone, thank you for listening and watching. And we will see you here next week. Same bat time, same bat station.
Be safe out there.
All right. Say good night and God bless.
I'm praying for this land I love, America, America, the home of the free. But there are people making plans to change America. They've no respect for her or what matters most to me. That's why I stand for the flag and I kneel at the cross. Long for the friends I have loved and lost. And I still believe with God we trust, and the freedom our forefathers granted us. I hope it's not too late to save America. Our battle cry across America. We've got to rescue her. You know it's up to me and you to see the truth behind their eyes. Don't change America. God bless America and the red, white, and blue. That's why I stand for the flag and I kneel at the cross. For the friends I have loved and lost, and I still believe in God we trust, and the freedom our forefathers granted us. I hope it's not too late to say America. For the friends we have loved and lost, and we still believe in God we trust, in the freedom our forefathers granted us. We know it's not too late to save America. Save America. Let's save America. Together we can save America.